welcome back. Today's lesson is number 15, job number 15. So go ahead and find your notebook and your pencil and be ready, okay? Your pre-class sheet looks similar to this, okay? You're to do a family tree, okay? So I wanted to explain that. I did mine. So on the trunk of the tree, you're gonna put your name, okay? So and then the first parts of the tree, you'll put your mom and dad's name, okay? And then off on dad's side, you'll put your, which would be your grandparents' names, right? This is your dad. These would be your grandparents, okay? So you put their names, or you're the names of your dad's mom and dad. And then the same on the other side. This would be your mom, and these are your mom's parents, okay? So that's a family tree, all right? We are talking today about how God is all-knowing, okay? And if you really think about it, before you were born, God is so all-knowing that He already knew your family tree, okay? He already knew mine even before we were born. He knows what kids you'll have. And so He's all-knowing. That's something to think about, okay? All right. We are picking up after the Tower of Babel, okay? If you remember, we talked about how they all were together in one place, and that was not what God wanted them to do. God wanted them to scatter, okay? So He confused their language at the Tower of Babel, and that caused them to scatter out on the earth, okay? So in this time period, we're going to talk about Abram today, a new man. You may know him better as Abraham. So if I say Abraham, I'm sorry, because at this point in time in the Bible, God has not changed His name, okay? So His name is Abram, okay? And he lives in a place called Ur. Ur, okay? You'll probably hear it most often. It's in the civilization of Mesopotamia, okay? So Mesopotamia is one of the earliest civilizations that we know about today, okay? And so there were a lot of people that lived in this area, and they were very, very smart because they came up with the whole mathematical system, like thank them for algebra. They came up with writings. They came up with they looked at the stars, and they charted stars and astronomy. So they discovered lots of things. So this would have been the same time period as when Abram lived, okay? And Abram lived in a place called Ur, all right? Now, I want you to think back to in Genesis, okay? So we're going to talk about Abraham. God's made all these promises, okay? Remember we talked about the contract that He made, okay? Well, He knew, He's so all-knowing that He knew when Adam and Eve sinned, when sin came into the world, okay? And remember, He told Eve, He told the serpent that the seed of the woman is going to bruise your head, and you are going to bruise his heel. And remember, we talked about that was a prophecy to come about Jesus, okay? Jesus was going to die, but in His death, He was going to crush Satan. He was going to crush sin, okay? And so we talked about Noah and how Noah repopulated the earth through his sons, okay? So this thought of this family tree, if we were to do Noah's family tree or Abram's family tree, okay? If we had Abram right here, it would go back to Noah's son, Shem, okay? Shem, God chose, remember Noah had 3 sons, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. And He chose Shem to be the one that Abraham would come through, all right? So keep that in mind, because when we talk about Abraham in a minute, we're going to talk a little bit more about family trees, okay? So I want you to think, in Genesis chapter 12, God talks to Abram, and he says, Abram, I want you to pack up all your stuff, and I want you to go to a land which I will show you. Think about that. What if your dad came home after work one day and said, all right, pack up all your stuff, we're moving. Well, Daddy, where are we moving? I don't know yet. We're just getting up and we're just going to drive and we're moving. How would that make you feel? I think I would be a little scared. Like, I like to know where I'm going. I like to have a plan. But Abram trusted God and had enough faith, because remember, it was God that actually said, Abram, I want you to pack up all your stuff and I'm going to show you a land, okay? And he's eventually going to give him this land, okay? So that's what Abram does. He obeys. He packs up all his belongings. He has a wife that's named, well, you'll know her as Sarah later on, but Sarai. And that he takes his nephew Lot with him and his family, and they move. Okay, they move from this place that they've lived for a long time, that they're familiar with, and all of their friends and the rest of their family. Okay, and they trust in God and they move. They leave the land of Ur, and he does it because he loves God and he trusts God, and God told him to do it. Okay, so how did he know where he was going? God was going to show him. In fact, your memory verse talks about this. And you can even read in the book of Hebrews, which is in the New Testament, about Abram. Okay, I'm going to read it. It's in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 8, 9, and verse 10 is your memory verse. It says, by faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. By faith, he made his home in the promised land like a stranger in a foreign country. He lived in tents, as did Isaac and Jacob, who were heirs with him of the same promise. Verse 10, your memory verse, for he was looking forward to the city with foundations, whose architect and builder is God. Even in the book of Hebrews, it refers back to this time in Abram's life where he trusted God and did what God said, because God is about to make good on his promise, okay? So, God tells Abram, I'm going to make promises to you, and I'm going to keep them, okay? So the first one is, and I will greatly multiply your seed as the stars of the heaven and as the sand which is on the seashore, okay? That means that through Abram, God is going to make a great nation, okay? So that means he's going to have lots and lots of descendants, and they're going to be God's people. You will later know them by Israelites, okay? We'll talk about a lot about the Israelites this year, okay? So that's the great nation that God is promising to Abram. Okay, the second one, and I will give to you and to your descendants after you the land of your sojourning, all of the land of Canaan for an everlasting possession. Okay? So the second promise God is making to Abram is, I'm going to give you this land. Okay? I'm making you move from Ur, and I'm going to show you where to go. And where Abram ends up is in the land of Canaan. And we call that the promised land. Okay? So all of Abram's descendants are going to be in the promised land. Okay? And the last one says, And in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. Okay? I want you to really remember these 3 promises that God is making to Abram, because we'll talk about those a lot through this class. Okay? This last one is the most important one. And in your seed, all the nations of the earth shall be blessed. Okay? I'm going to give you an example. All right, say that you, Seth, okay? What if I were to tell you that in the year 3001, wow, that's a long time away, right? But what if I were to tell you that there is going to be a terrible virus worse than the coronavirus, and your descendant, Seth, the person that you have, and then the person that they have, and on down the line, your descendant is going to know how to cure that sickness? Would all the people in the world be blessed because of your descendant? Yes, they would. Okay? This last promise that God is making to Abram is about Jesus. Okay? God's plan, his all-knowing plan, was that he knew that mankind was going to sin. And so he knew he had to have a plan to save us from our sins. And way back in the first book of the Bible, God's plan is to send Jesus to heal everybody's sickness, because sin is sickness. And so that's how Abraham's seed, his descendants, are going to bless the whole world, because Jesus is going to come through his family tree. That is so neat. All right, so the 3 promises, let's review them one more time, okay? He's going to make him a great nation. He's going to give them the land that he's promised. And then all nations are going to be blessed through Abraham, which means Jesus is coming through Abram's family line. That is pretty neat. So the rest of the story is that Abram does go, he packs up, and he gets to the land of Canaan, where the Canaanites live, and that's the promised land. And that's where God tells him to set up camp. And so he does. He lives there. And when he gets there, he builds an altar. Okay? He's in a place in the promised land called Bethel. And he builds an altar because that is the way that he worships God. He trusted in God because he knows that God is all-knowing. And he did what he said, and he was blessed. And so he worshiped God. And it says he called on the name of the Lord. Okay? That just means he worshiped him and thanked him for being with him. I have a couple of fun posters. This one says, enjoy, life's a winding road. Okay? We might not know where our life and our road is going to go, but one thing that we can count on is that God is all-knowing, and God is always with us, and he will show us the way if we let him. All right, let's get your work order out and see about our questions. All right. God the Father, solid rock foundation, Genesis 12, 1 through 8. We're still in the book of law in the Old Testament. And we talked all about how GTF is all-knowing. Now remember, if you need to, I'm going to go quickly, but you can pause if you need to get the answers. All right, which son of Noah did GTF choose to begin the family tree of Jesus? Well, out of the 3, that was Shem. Okay, If we did Shem's family tree, Jesus would be in it. Why did Abram leave his family and homeland of Ur? Well, because God told him to. And he was obedient, right? How did Abram know what to do? In other words, how did he know where to go? Well, God said that he would show him when he got there. Show him the land. What 3 things did God promise to do for Abram? Okay, these are the important ones that we need to remember. Okay, first one, he was going to make him a great nation, which would later on be called the nation of Israel. He's going to give him the land. Okay, this promised land, the land of Canaan, he is going to give it to him. It's going to belong to Abram and his descendants. And then the last one, all families on the earth will be blessed through him, through Abraham. That's because if we do Abram's family tree line, Jesus comes through Abram. What did GTF promise to give to Abram's descendants? Well, that would be the promised land, okay? Abram was going there, and that's where God showed him to stop and make camp and live, and that land would be his descendants. How did Abram respond to God the Father's covenant, okay? We were calling it promises, but this is the same thing, a covenant. God made a covenant or a promise with Abram, okay? And so what did Abram do to show he was thankful? Well, he built an altar at Bethel, and he worshiped him, or he called upon the name of the Lord. All right, that's all for today. I will see you next time. Bye.